So good morning, everyone, and happy Labor Weekend. Of course, we try to meditate on the kindness of all sentient beings who contribute directly, indirectly to make our life easier, convenient. Every day, that is part of our practice when you meditate on kindness of others, the bodhicitta. That is, and definitely the labors are one of the very important who play a huge role to make our life more convenient. Without them, it would be difficult. So, keeping that in our mind and what we can do, we try to make their life not difficult. Sometimes we can be not so kind to them. And also, we can keep in our prayer, dedications, in whatever way that we can. Okay? So we'll start with a short mindful breathing exercise to bring our mind in the moment present. Then we can try to have a good motivation, intention of being here by contemplating life is very uncertainty, unpredictable. This samsaric life, never know when things can change so suddenly. Never know when our life come to end. Therefore, while we are still alive, while our health is still even though not the best, but still we can function while our health allow our to functions. I must use it to practice the Dharma as much as possible. If I don't practice now, one never know what's going to happen next. When we want to practice, we might not be in situation to practice because our health situations. Or our end to our life come before we are able to really practice. So what we have now is this moment, this present. So how can I use it better, more positive, more meaningful? And the way to do it is practice the Dharma. There's nothing more meaningful. I had purpose to then practice the Dharma. That means trying to reduce and overcome those disturbing negative emotions, and trying to increase and improve those helpful, beneficial state of minds. To do that, I must practice. And to practice, I need to be encouraged, inspired, or reminded of the practice all the time. For that very reason and purpose, I'm going to listen to the teachings. May my act of coming here to listen and to engage in discussion, reflection, contemplation, may all of these become cause and conditions to achieve fully awakened state. So I can be most greatest help and benefit to each and every sentient beings. Okay.
Let's take refuge first. If one of our Zoom hosts could please share the refuge verse. I'm sure we know it, just in case. Thank you so much, Shayla. Oops. Well, we'll recite slowly. You can recite with me or after me. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Once in Tibetan, Sangye Choran Soki Chonam La Jonchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi Dagi Jinso Ki. Sorry, I made a mistake. Dagi Jin Sonam Ki Jora Penshir Sangye Druparsho. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So we have been following this, the Lamrim, the refined gold title. And I think we last time we just finished the section on the practice of initial scope. And now we are on the practice of middle scope. And just to summarize, through meditation on precious human rebirth, death impermanent, and then going for refuge, and then meditating on, through meditating on law of cause and effect, and having meditated law of cause and effect, and having gone to refuge, then, keeping the precept of the refuge, and that is trying to live your life more virtuous. That means trying to abstain or refrain from engaging 10 non-virtuous action and trying to engage in the practice of 10 virtuous action. If we live our life in that way, then, we will have a high rebirth in next time, But as long as we are not free from the samsara, the rebirth will be within the samsara. It's a better rebirth, but within the samsara. And so, and as long as the samsara, even it's better, but still there is suffering, still there's a problem. Still you are not free from the suffering, still you are not free from the problem completely, permanently. So that's where the next comes. The practice on middle scope is contemplating, meditating on the nature of samsara, meditating on how nature of samsara is a suffering, regardless of what rebirth you have. So until we are free from samsara, our situation can improve a little bit here and there, but still never free from the suffering and problem permanently. We will continue to experience that. So that is that. So I think page number 17, where it says training the mind on the path common to the person of intermediate capacity. Although by avoiding the 10 non-virtues and practicing their opposites, the 10 virtues, you can attain a special rebirth in higher realms, such as human beings, gods, demigods, so forth. But you will not pass beyond the frustrations of cyclic existence. Why? Because even those higher rebirths are still within the samsara, the cyclic existence. because you are still not free from that. For this reason, seek to attain nirvana, liberations beyond all the suffering. So therefore, try to have the intentions and try to put the effort, not only to have just higher rebirth, but actually to free from the samsara completely. And when you are free from the samsara, then you are free from all the suffering, and not only temporarily, but permanently. At the moment, sometimes we are free from certain problems, certain challenges, certain pain, but again it comes later. It manifests, arises in a different form or some way. So we are never free from that permanently. You know, when your health is not bad, you take medicines, cure, you feel good, healthy. But again, after some time, something goes wrong, and then you start to feel not well. It keeps happening, repeating again and again in terms of health. That keeps happening with our work, job, financial situations. You know, there are times when you feel you are doing well, and then things started to go other way around, and you feel things started to go bad. And then again, sometimes it started to improve, get better, but again, it changes. Same in a relationship, you know, any kind of relationship between two persons, couples, children and parents, between friends, you know, colleagues. Sometimes we feel this relationship will always be like that, always great and nice, but we all know things can get wrong. You know, there could be misunderstanding, miscommunications, or due to other conditions. You know, there's a crack in the relationship. It is not same. You know, maybe you have to work very hard to build up that relationship again. Maybe you might be successful to build up again and come similar to what you do. Again, it doesn't say that way. Again, things, you know, situation changes. So that's like that, you know, it keep on. So there's no real permanent freedom from the sufferings until you achieve nirvana or liberations. If you don't want suffering, not only for temporary, but forever, if you don't want suffering permanently, then then you should seek with the right intention, motivations, and with the right effort to work to achieve that liberation. What is the nature of the shortcoming of cyclic existence? Cyclic existence or samsara. Those are lower realms that have been explained above, you know, 3 lower realms. Meditate upon them well, on the suffering of 3 lower realms. For when you have done so, when you have meditated enough and well, you will realize that you would not enjoy such long and intense misery, and you will automatically generate an intention to work by any possible means to remain free of such unsatisfactory modes of existence, such as the lower rebirth. You know, the more you contemplate on their intense, long suffering, and the more you feel real of that. You know, it's not just like watching movie there, but like that you yourself could be in that situations, in that realms. then you generate a strong wish, not wanting to be in that state, not wanting to be in that. And when you have that strong state, not wanting to be in that state, then you try to avoid the causes that lead to such rebirth, and you try to engage in the practice that free you from such states. So through that, even you have high rebirth, then however, even the high realms, such as human, human realm, God, demigod, are not beyond the reaches of suffering. Still, they are in the nature of suffering. Still, they are not free from the suffering. Humans are not free from the sufferings. Demigods are not free from the sufferings. Gods are not all free from the sufferings. And to progress along the path, you must eventually face this truth. We really have to understand and accept this truth. And that is the first truth that Buddha taught after the enlightenment, the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. Because not understanding the truth of noble, not understanding the true nature of the suffering, we are still caught up in the samsara, and we still continue to experience suffering. It's like a mice not realizing it's a tribe. They go in and then they are tribe. Or any other animals that have been tribe. If they realize it's a tribe, they will not try to go inside. They will try to avoid that. But at the moment, we don't have real deep understanding that as long as you are samsara, regardless of what rebirth you have, still is a suffering. Because we don't understand that, we are attached to certain lifestyles, certain high rebirth, and certain life. Instead of not having attachment, we are still attached to that, and we still try to pursue that. Not understanding the one that you are trying to achieve, that you are trying to accomplish, that you are trying to pursue, that itself is actually the nature of suffering. That it itself is not free from the sufferings and samsara. So in order to understand, the nature of the suffering better, in script, many of the teachings, they describe about 8 types of suffering, 6 types of suffering, 3 types of sufferings. And it is all about talking about suffering, but looking from different way of it. Because there's countless suffering, but just trying to content within the main point of them. So here it starts with 8 sufferings. And 8 suffering are mainly the suffering of human beings. Of course, others, but mainly human beings. So here, human beings, for example, are wrapped in suffering. If you are samsaric human beings, then that's what it is. If you are not samsaric human beings, then you are not in same situations. Okay, so here we are talking about samsaric human beings. So then explain, while in the womb, talking about the birth, suffering, you suffer from darkness, constrictions, and immersions in a filthy substances while you are mother's womb. When during the last months of the mother's pregnancy, the downward pushing wind comes, the unborn baby feel like small pieces of wood crushed in the giant vase, or like a sesame seed pounded for its oil. After he emerged from the womb, after the birth, coming out, he feel as though he fell into the pit of thorns, even if he was wrapped in the soft garment and placed in the feathery bed. Such is the agony of the birth. So it's the suffering of the birth. So again, even though child might feel intense or less intense of this suffering that is mentioned, but all go through that sufferings, to certain levels, the suffering of birth. Then next, the baby gradually grows into a youth, and soon he is old. So aging starts. So of course, the description here might not be experienced exactly by everyone's, but it is experienced by a lot of people. And those who doesn't experience exactly as it's described here, but they experience certain level of that. If you his back bends like a bow, and we see a lot of people who have that problem, whose spine started to curve, His hair turns white as a dried flower. Mine is already. There isn't much left, but whatever it is. I haven't become like my back hasn't become like a bow at the moment, but I think it's getting there. His forehead filled with wrinkles until he looks like a strip of sliced leather. Also, there is some of that. Sitting down like dropping in a heavy load. And again, I've experienced and seen like that. Even my mom was like that, when later her part, it's like dropping the load, very, because there's no strong control, And standing up is like uprooting a tree, Yeah. If he tries to speak, his tongue will not be obeyed. Yeah, sometimes they want to say something and then the speech comes something else. Of course, it could happen not only old age, also earlier when you have stroke and paralyzed, different things, but also with the age, it can also that. And if you try to walk, his how you say statures. His sensory powers, such as the sight and hearing, begin to fail him. As we get older, your eyesight become weaker, your hearing ability become weaker, and we all see. And also, I'm in that process. I'm also starting to feel a little bit of that. His body loses its luster and resembles a corpse. His memory degenerates and he can remember nothing, In some cases, absolutely, you can end up that they don't remember anything. In some cases, you do not end up that, but your memory does get affected. Your memory is not as clear as it used to be. And that is, I think, anyone who lived old age up to 18, 19, they all can feel that their memory is not sharp as they used to be. In some cases, as he said, they might not remember anything of the, but even nothing, but even we remember, our memories is very weak, poor, become like that. The power of digestion fell, and he can no longer eat properly, no matter how much he craves food. So again, your body, because your immune system, your body is weaker, so you might not be able to digest a lot of food that your body was able to digest before. Whether it's a raw, whether it's some kind of other hard things. And even you like those food, even you crave for those food, your body doesn't tolerate it anymore. The body doesn't tolerate it, your body cannot digest. And so again, because the machine has become old, so it doesn't run as well as it used to. At this point, his life is almost finished. As we get closer to that, the death is rapidly approaching. Such are the suffering of aging. That is the suffering of aging. Again, sometimes we don't want to talk about the sufferings in general, and especially suffering of aging, suffering of death. It's almost like taboo, but it's better to talk. It's better to contemplate, because this is something happens, so it is going to happen for sure. And so instead of that, with that understanding, accepting make. Of course, if there is something that we can avoid, that we don't have to experience it, that we try to do that, there's no doubt. But there are certain things we cannot avoid, fact and reality. Those, the more you are able to accept it, sooner the better. Less pain to yourself. You are not fighting with yourself. You are not fighting with that fact. You accept and you adjust to that new reality, new fact. When you don't accept a new reality, the new fact, you are constantly fighting with that. When you are constantly fighting with that on your mind, on mental level, then it creates so much pain and suffering. Instead, we accept this is just a natural process. It's nothing, it's just a natural process. The plants comes, grows, and they comes, the leaves drop, winter comes, and they die. And same, it's not something that is happening just to you. It's the way things are. It's the process, it's the whole. That is the nature in the samsara, that is. So there is suffering of the aging. As well as the suffering of birth and age throughout life. So between the birth and the aging or the death, he must continually confront suffering of illness. Throughout our life, we go through illness. Sometimes it's very minor, sometimes it's major, sometimes it's chronic. Sometimes it's not so chronic, so different, but still not feeling well. Everyone go through that. Some people have more terminal illness, more difficult to cure. Some, maybe there's no cure at a certain stage. Some difficult to cure. In some, maybe there's no terminal, not so serious, major, but still minor. Even minor, even just have a cold, can be miserable for how many days it could last. It could be a week, it could be a few days, So, serious or minor illness that we experience, and I don't think there is anyone in this world that you can actually point out, this person has never experienced any illness. There's no one that I'm aware of, When the elements of the body fall out of the harmonies, his skin dries and his flesh sacks. Food and drink, usually so appealing, seems repulsive, and instead he must ingest bitter medicine. I guess he's talking about the Tibetan medicines. Because of course the author is a Tibetan. And so Tibetan medicine can be very bitter. Because they don't use sugar. In Western medicine, everything you make them sweet, coated with the sweet. So that is why. So when you are sick, you have to take medicine. If you have to take medicines, and then something like you might have to take bitter medicine and undergo unpleasant treatment like operations. Nobody want to go through operations if there is a way to do. But when you get illness and there is no other way to treat it, whether you like it or not, you have to go through that. Mostly boost. What is that? What does that mean? It's the cup, yeah? The cup thing. Okay. And acupunctures and so forth. Yeah. So even you don't like all of this, having needles, so many needles at one place or around that. But when you are sick and when you need help, and if that helps, then again you have to go through that. Should the disease be incurable, he experienced immeasurable suffering from fear, worry, and apprehensions. And it's a natural, it's a normal, for ordinary sentient beings. Of course, very highly trained practitioner, highly developed practitioner might be different experiences, They can overcome such fear, worry, apprehensions. But for those ordinary beings who are trying to be on the path, who are trying to practice, who haven't reached that level of practice, then it's normal for someone to go through so much of fear, worry, apprehensions. When you know that you are going to die, and the illness that you are going, there's no cure, and that there's no cure, and that so there is physical illness. On top of that physical illness, then you have this mental mental pain and suffering, mental anguish, fear, worry, apprehension, all of that, on top of the physical pain that you are dealing with, physical discomfort that you are dealing with, on top of that, then all these emotions arises. And now you have to deal with also those emotions. So dealing with two levels of illness, physical and emotional, unless someone has strong practice to deal with those emotions, And if the disease is fatal, he lives with death in front of his eyes. And it is very painful if someone accept and okay, if they are okay, ready to face that reality, that fact, I think it will be less painful. But when someone is not ready, when they don't accept, when they are not ready, and they are trying to fight it, and your bodies doesn't respond the way and it is a different way. So then you see the death in front of your eyes. Every day is struggles. Every day is pain. How many ever days, weeks, months? Every day is so much pain. On the other hand, even physically, you might have discomfort. Physically, you are dissolving. Physically, it's coming to an end. But on emotional, mental level, you accept and being okay with that, ready for that. At least you don't have to go through all this mental anguish and the pain and sufferings. And that is one difference it makes, So practice the Dharma and training your mind that is what we can do. In such situations, we might not be able to stop the death that we are encountering. We might not be able to stop through your practice and meditations. You might not be able to stop the death, but at least, and sometimes maybe you might not even able to overcome the physical discomfort. Maybe you need medicine and other things to have a little bit more comfort, to make it a little bit less painful. But all the mental anguish that normally we go through because of all of that, we don't have to go through that if you have practice and if you train your mind. You don't have to suffer that much, especially all those mental anguish. Thought of harmful deeds he committed during his lifetime caused his heart to fill with regret. At the moment, a lot of things we might not remember, unless you meditate. But at the time of death, a lot of things can manifest, comes. You start to remember all of that. And if you remember that, and there's nothing you can change, there's nothing you can do in that time, it can be a lot of regret, a lot of guilt. And with that, some guilt feelings and regret feeling, again, one could go through so much mental anguish, struggles, and pain. That is why it is, when do you do the Vasattva retreat, like 3 months Vasattva retreat, I've heard a lot of practitioners who are doing those retreats, they go through a lot of struggles. Because you are constantly always thinking about all the negative karma that you have done during those periods. And sometimes there is so much. And, at least in that point, you have the tools, you have the practice, meditations to deal with that, so overcome that, so that it doesn't bother you in the future anymore. But you have not done those meditation and practice. You have just tried to ignore or try to push them because you don't want to go there, because it's painful, it's disturbing, it's painful, because you might start to feel bad about yourself. Because of that, sometimes we don't want to look in ourselves. Sometimes we don't want to think about those things. We try to hide. But at the time of death, it can just come, manifest in that way. So if you don't want to be in that, it's better to deal with that now. And through different practice, meditations, clear all of that so that you have no regret or less regret, if possible, no regret at all, and guilt and all of that. So it is better to do now than at the time of then when your body and mind is so weak. Even you want to do something, even you want to practice, is much more harder. Because physically, mentally, you are so weak. At the moment, you're physically much more strong, mentally strong, and something you can contemplate, meditate, and kind of deal with all this so that it doesn't bother you in the futures. And he recollects all that he has left undone. He understands that he soon must leave his body, friends, relatives, associates, and positions. And again, when you realize that, and when you see that's coming, that you have to leave all this behind, because death is coming closer to you. If you have strong attachments, the more stronger attachments, the more mental anguish you experience. The fear, the worries, apprehensions, all of that arises. Less attachment to them, less mental anguish, More attachment, your mind is not ready to let it go. So you are grasping, clinging, whereas your body is ready to go. So there is a lot of struggles, But when your mind is not clinging and grasping and attachment, and you are ready to let it go, without much struggles, when the physical body is ready to live, you can just make progress with that, go in hand with hand that without the struggles, and then of course the mental struggle there. And physically, his mouth dries. So as your elements, the 4 or 5 elements dissolve, as then as some signs of that, then such as when the water element dissolves, his mouth dries, his lips shrivel, his nose sinks, his eyes eyes fade, and his breath pass in the gaps. Tremendous fear of lower realm arise with him, especially, if you believe in a lower rebirth, then, and you remember all the negative things that we have done, then again fear could arise, with him. And though does not wish it, he dies. So even though he does not want to die, but cannot stop, have to face. So that is the suffering of death. Suffering of death. Not only that, human beings suffer in many specific ways too, So what are those? Some of them, some meet with a bandit and thieves and lose all their wealth, So your things are robbed, stolen, you know. You work with so hard to accumulate, and then, someone rob you, someone steals from you, and you see, in the modern days, scam, so many scams. And especially you see those scams for especially more vulnerable peoples when their memory is not so strong, it's easy to scam. And because you don't read or you don't much news from normal, and then sometimes it's hard for them to differentiate scam or real things. And so, through the scam, people rob, and losing all their earnings, all their savings, So that is a different way. This is a new way of robbery, thief, It's not like breaking your house physically and taking it, with all these scams. It can empty. So, and which is unfortunately, which is happening so much now. It's kind of scary. Their bodies are pierced by weapons or beaten with clubs and so forth. Again, in war, you see that, so much physically wounded, losing their hand, losing their feet, losing some part of their other parts, or sometime in a gang fight, or sometime two individual fight, or sometime in families fraud fight, So people physically hurting, harming each others, wounding each others, and so it happens. A lot of people experience that. Not everyone experience, but a lot of people experience that suffering among the human beings. Some suffer happy punishment at the hand of legal authorities for having committed crime, such as death penalty or lifetime prisons, and in some cases, tortures very badly, so like that. Others hear dreadful news or rumors of distant family or friend and suffer terribly. And then, we hear that often, You hear one of your family members or one of your friends is sick, not doing well. You hear one of your friends or your family, one of your colleagues pass away. You hear one of your family, one of your friends, them, they have break up, divorce, they had to break up, or they had, something happened to their business, their job, they lost their job, lost their business, all these kind of dreadful news that we hear, and by hearing that, we suffer. By hearing that, then we suffer, we worry, and so forth. Or they fear the loss of their wealth and positions, and us, and that is one thing, we always, our fear of losing our wealth, our positions, our reputations, our fames, Our friends always fear and wary of losing all of that, and are sick with worry. One of the worst sickness with us, which is more predominating, is the sickness of worry. Even when physically healthy, we always have this sickness of worry, fear and worry all the time. Fear and worry about our health, fear and worry about our old age, fear or worry when I get old, what would happen to me? How would, all these things, the fear and worry with relationships, fear and worry about our wealth, losing them wealth, or not being able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. All of that, fear and worry of losing what we have, and fear or worry of not being able to achieve what we do not have. Even though there is a term for parent, I think now it is becoming more and more for everyone, the pilot, no, helicopter parent. The helicopter parent were constantly worried about the children all the time, all the time. They cannot stop not worry. I don't know how it came like that, but like during our time, we were just, our parents went morning to forest or for the farm, and we just, no one to take care of us, no one to look after them, no one didn't worry. That is, and it was just okay. It's not like there were not bad people even at that time. Even at that time, there are sometimes bad people. And if you're unlucky or whatever, then sometimes bad things can happen. Even with the pilot parenting, even you try to keep everything, try to protect everything, sometimes things happens. But that is not only that. I think that mentality is, of course, that is a term for certain parenting, but I think that is very much like even in general public now, too much worry about everything, worrying about too many things all the time. There's too much worry all the time, unnecessary worries, a lot of them, unnecessary worries, and that is, mm. Then some other human beings suffer from encountering people in situations that they do not wish to encounter. Yeah, and that's it. You get leader that you don't want them to see. You have leader that you don't want them to win, and they win. Something you don't want, but when you are planning something, you don't want snow, you don't want rain, and sometimes it rains, snows. So you want your business, your job, everything's go. You don't want them to go wrong, but sometimes they go wrong. So the suffering of all of that, facing and encountering, people, situation, experiences that you don't want to experience that you don't want to face, that you don't want to see, but due to cause, conditions, situations, circumstances, you have to face them, you have to face them, you have to encounter them. You cannot stop from encountering, facing, and experiencing it. And because of that, there's so much suffering, because that is something you don't want to encounter. Because that is something you desperately do not want to encounter. The more stronger you don't want to encounter that, when you encounter that, the pain is more intense. If you don't have strong aversion or dislike to that, if you don't have strong aversion, dislike to that, if you encounter it, it's not the greatest, but it's okay. You know, it doesn't become so much pain and suffering. It doesn't become so cause of miserable. You know, how much you suffer, it depends on how much stronger aversion you have with that, how much stronger you dislike you have. And how much strong aversion, dislike you have with encountering those situations that you don't want to encounter, it depends on how much attachment you have to the opposite of that. Basically, it comes to the attachments. And still others, other human beings suffer through not getting what they want, you know. And that is another suffering that we all experience, and because of attachments. And is when we are not free from the attachments, then we will suffer this all our life. If you are poor, homeless, you suffer from that. If you have home, shelter, you still suffer from that. No, because you still want more, better, and you are not getting that. You know, you still improve, you own a home, car, everything, still you suffer from that, because still you want to have more than that. If you have attachments, still you crave for more than that, or better than that, something else than that. And so there is always sense of not getting what you want because you want more than that. Then you become millionaire, billionaire, trillionaire. They are also suffering same way. The millionaire want to be billionaire, and they have suffering of not being able to be a billionaire. Those billionaires want to be a trillionaire, and they have suffering of not being able to be a trillionaire. Those who are trillionaire, they want to be a zillionaire, and they have a suffering of not being able to be a zillionaire. There's no end, as long as you have that attachment. As long as we have attachments, we all have the same sufferings of wanting more, better, something else, and the fear, the worry, and suffering of not being able to achieve that, not being able to accomplish that. And all that can be ended when you give up attachments. When you give up attachments, then you have no more fear of that, no more worry of that, you know. So here, for example, although someone may try to farm a piece of land, when they want to farm a piece of land so that they can have the good harvest and so they can make living from that, you know, so they don't want to lose that. But again, drought, frost, and hell may destroy his crops. It's something that he or she do not wish to encounter, but sometimes they encounter and lose. They engage in to make profit, but sometimes instead of making profit, they lose even the capital they invested. He may work as a sailor or fisherman, to earn, to earn money and to make living, to support families. But sudden gusts of wind may result in his ruin, Again, that is not something he want to see it, but again, things can come in a way that, again, that can destroy the boat, and even taking lives, losing life. If he goes into business, he may lose his investment, and even he doesn't lose, or after much effort, you put so much effort, invested your time for many years, so much effort, but no profit. And the reason you invested, put so much effort, is to make profit. And you don't want to lose the profit, and again, but sometimes you lose, Yeah. So that is this is for the lay practitioners. And for the monks, he said he may become a monk, but one day he may have to face sorrow of having broken his vows. Again, as a lay practitioner, some of the possibilities of the suffering that different human beings experience, basically encountering those that you don't want to encounter and not getting what you want, not being able to achieve and getting what you want. And same, even the monks or nuns, even though they wish to remain as monks and nuns forever, but again, even they don't want to give up, they don't want to lose it, but again, it's possible that they could lose their vows and they have no option to give up their vows and rope, and there could be many other suffering problems and sufferings, yeah. In short, having taken samsara human form, this samsaric physical human form, this samsaric aggregate under the force of karma and afflictions, and this samsaric human form or physical body or aggregate, which is the result of the force of karma and afflictive emotions, you must face the suffering. As long as you have this human samsaric aggregate, no one can escape. No one can escape. Here he's saying, no one can escape. The birth, sickness, old age, death, and other suffering that's mentioned before, Being separated from those that you like, losing and being separated from those you like. No. It could be friends, families, situation, experiences. There are a lot of things that you like very much, that you hold dear to you and you like and you don't want to lose. But the suffering of losing them, because we do lose them. And then there's the suffering of, as mentioned, facing, encountering those that you don't want. Something that you dislike, you don't want, undesirable objects, situation, experiences, something you dislike, you don't want, again, having to face them, So, yeah. But if we don't have this samsaric physical aggregate, which is the result of the force of karma and the delusion, if it is not that, even you have a human form, you don't have to experience all these sufferings. But as long as your rebirth is the result of karma and the delusions, then we all have to experience that. There's no escape from that. It's the nature of such a rebirth. It's the part of such a rebirth. As well, you use your precious human life largely as an instrument to produce more cause of lower rebirth and for greater misery in the future. So even though this precious human life have so much potential that we spoke before, so much potentials to do good, but also it has a strong potential to do bad if we misuse it. As His own Dalai Lama says, we human beings have the potential to bring biggest positive change in this planet, in this world, if we put in the right directions. But also we have the potential to destroy this planet and everything this planet if we misuse this human life. Same is here is saying, we have this precious human life with so much potential. It would be such a pity. It would be such a pity and sad if you use this to create more cause and condition for lower rebirth and more suffering in the future, instead of using it to uplift yourself and to free from the lower rebirth and the suffering in the futures. And not only for yourself, but for other sentient beings as well. So then here again, even though we can talk about so many different types of sufferings, as is described, 8 types of sufferings, or sometimes 6 types of sufferings. But if you kind of summarize, it can be contained within the 3 sufferings. And so here it comes of that one, So I think maybe today I will stop here because maybe I might take some cautions. So one thing is through contemplating, meditating on the nature of suffering of samsara. If we meditate, if we contemplate, through meditation, contemplation, if we have a deep understanding and realizations, the nature of samsara is a suffering. If you really deeply understand, then when something bad happened to you, you wouldn't be so surprised. And you wouldn't feel, why is it happening to me? It shouldn't happen to me, but why is it happening to me? Because you understand this is samsara. This is what samsara is. It helps you to accept. Instead of being so frustrated and so upset and so angry or whatever happened in your life, something, you just think, okay, that is what samsara is. This is what samsara means. This is what samsara is. As long as I'm in samsara, these kind of things are going to happen. It's not only happen now, it will happen in the futures. It will continue to happen. And if I don't want this, then I have to free myself from samsara. If I don't want that, I have to free from myself from samsara. That means to free from the cause of samsara, the delusion and the karma, the contaminated karma and the delusions. That give you inspirations to really put effort into your practice to reduce and overcome the contaminated karma and the delusions, and and not be overwhelmed by the pain and sufferings. Not being when I feel that I don't deserve it or that it shouldn't happen to me, and why it's happening to me, I will have more frustration and anger, upset with the situations. And for whoever I might blame for that situation, I could blame myself, I could blame someone else for that situation. So you are, dealing with different emotions. It give rise to many different negative emotions, feelings, because you feel that shouldn't happen to me, and it's happening to me. Why it is happening to me? You almost feel like you're punished for, even there's no one to punish, but that's how you might feel. I'm being punished for no wrong of mine. In Buddhism, there is no concept of punishment by someone out there. There's someone there, the Buddha or enlightened being or non-enlightened beings, someone who is punishing, rewarding. Sometimes we might think karma. Karma is also, you can't say it's punishment or rewarding. If I put my hand in the fire, it will burn. But I wouldn't say the fire punished me. Would you? If I go outside when it's raining, I get wet. Would I say the rain punished me? No, we wouldn't say, because that is what is the nature of rain, is water and wet. The nature of fire is burning. So there's no concept of punishing or rewarding, anything like that. That is how things are. The nature of things are like that. Similarly, that is how we should understand the karma. Sometimes even when we have studied karma, sometimes people still feel that the karma is punishing them. So, so anyway, I was talking about, so when you understand and accept with truth, not just because it says you accept, but you have done enough contemplation, meditations. Through that contemplation and meditation, you have come to a deep understanding and experience of the nature of samsara, and accepting that is what it is. The nature of samsara is a suffering. And when you accept it, you don't get overwhelmed by the pain and suffering. And it doesn't lead to all these kind of others feelings, of frustrations, anger, and all those different feelings that could arise because of that. So understanding karma, realization, not just the intellectual understanding, but experiential understanding or realization, can be a very powerful tool to deal with, dealing positively in a healthy way when we do encounter some of the suffering and challenges. Okay, so yeah, I will take a couple of questions. Yes, please. There is Leah.
We've got, okay, I'm gonna take Leah first, is that okay? Okay. So we have 2 questions in the Gompa. If there's any online, please put your hand up.
Thank you. Geshe, so just on following what you were just saying, wouldn't you say that, I mean, couldn't you think about it this way? That you're, in some ways, our suffering, we choose it because, or the degree of which we suffer, because isn't suffering also empty of inherent existence?
Uh-huh.
That's my question.
Yeah. Everything that we talk about now, we're talking from conventional relative point of view. But if we talk from ultimate point of view, then of course, the suffering, happiness, good, bad, samsara, nirvana, they all are empty of inherent nature. There's no inherently samsara, there's no inherently nirvana, there's no inherently suffering, there's no inherently happiness. And if you have, again, realization of emptiness, then again, that wouldn't affect you so negatively like that it affects us now. But not having that understanding or realization then does have a strong impact on our mind.
So we could use that if we're feeling like there's a lot of suffering. We can use that suffering to contemplate. I kind of lost my train of thought. Not to diss everything, but we are choosing the degree of which we suffer.
To some extent, yeah, you can say. As you said, when we experience sufferings, especially if someone is being overwhelmed by sufferings, then I think definitely it's good to meditate on emptiness. So that can help to let go of the feeling overwhelmed by the intensity of the sufferings. But also, at the same time, it's also good to feel the pain and sufferings, because that will give rise to the compassions. Because of feeling your own pain and suffering, then you also understand there are also other people's sentient beings who also suffer like myself or worse than myself. And so then you understand their feeling, and therefore it allows you to feel compassions. But sometimes there's pain and suffering that you experience so intense and so overwhelming, it might be very hard to feel compassion for others. In such cases, maybe it's better to reduce the intensity of the pain and suffering. Meditation on emptiness can be a powerful way to reduce the intensity of the pain and suffering. Okay.
Thank you.
And then we're going to go to Mark. Thank you, Mark.
I memorized the 100-syllable Vajrasattva prayer and began using it a lot for purification and refuge. Since that time, I've been clobbered by events, the things out of the blue that I have no understanding of or expectation. It's like getting hit by a big wave. And it's happened 3 times now. And I was wondering, you mentioned Vajrasattva. I was wondering if you had any advice for that problem.
Sometimes, first of all, purification, when your negative karma is being cleansed and purified, and it can come in different forms. The purification come in different forms. It doesn't always come in a pleasant way. Immediate reaction, let's say, immediate reactions doesn't always come in a pleasant way. Of course, if through purification, if it has been there are 3 levels of being purified, depending on how strong, how sensitive, how strong our practice, and depending on many other conditions. If it is completely purified the whole negative karma completely, then of course, without experiencing any result of such negative karma, you purify. But sometimes because of purifications, we have purified the negative karma and changed the situations which otherwise can manifest later, taking your life. It could manifest in the form of illness now. And so you experience illness now, but instead of experiencing death, which you had the karma to die, maybe let's say next year or 5 years, because of your purification, it is purified without having to die. It can manifest in the form of illness or some other obstacles. That's one way of being purified, sign of being purified. And sometimes it can manifest in a way that through such purifications that it is kind of being, the manifestation of negative karma is being delayed, pushed away, and positive karma through your practice, instead of negative karma, positive karma are happening. But so therefore in purification, when we're doing purification, when we experience different obstacles, challenges, it doesn't mean it's a bad sign. It's also a good sign. Even in Dharmakata Sutra, Buddha mentioned in that if you recite, read, write, memorize many different, it can purify negative karma that you have to be born in one of the lower rebirths, such as hell. And because of purification, that could experience this life something bad. In this life, you can experience something bad, and by experiencing that bad, you have been purified by the negative karma otherwise that you have in a lower rebirth. So something happening bad in this life, if you look at bigger pictures, it's not a bad, it's a good. Instead of losing all your saving, you lost $100. Yeah. And so when you understand, if I didn't lose this $100, I could have lost my whole saving, you will be delightful, you will be happy. If you don't understand by losing this $100, that it saves you from losing whole your life saving. If you don't understand, you will be very upset by losing even $100. But when you understand the whole stories, then you appreciate, instead of being upset and angry, you go, oh, wonderful, and rejoice. So that can be also, so it doesn't always, it's not always bad sign. It's actually a good sign that purification is working. Yeah.
I think there's one more question.
Yeah.
And I have a question, Geshe. I'm not sure if I can articulate it. Okay, so with having meditated and practiced the importance of taking refuge, death and impermanence, and karma, and the nature of suffering, and moving it from just merely hearing the words to trying to experience it, and kind of trying to get it, right? And then also using the experiences I have of suffering and realizing how others, billions, are suffering more or at the same time. So just with that context, my question is, when I feel that suffering, now I understand, I'm just saying kind of understand it. And what I do is like, okay, let's just go through it, just do it. All right, this is just how life is, how some I'm not taking that and thinking it's not improving a sense of renunciation. I'm not like, I have to get out of here. It doesn't work that way for me. Instead, I'm like, my default mode is thinking that others are suffering more. So I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think again, that will come next time. I think at the moment, when you think of suffering, we only think of the suffering of pain, the first sufferings. When you talk about three sufferings, we all understand suffering of pain as a sufferings, and we all do not want that. But it's much more harder to understand the suffering of change as a suffering. It's even more difficult to understand the suffering of all pervasive as a suffering. And when you don't understand that the suffering of change and the suffering of all pervasive as suffering, then that is hard to have the renunciations, because then we only just want to see the improvement of our suffering of pain. How can I improve the suffering of pain so that it doesn't become suffering of pain anymore? So then and also when we feel the suffering of others, we are able to feel compassion of someone if we see the suffering of pain. But when we don't see suffering of pain, then it's hard to feel compassion for them, because you don't see them at their sufferings. Because you don't see the suffering of change as a suffering. You don't see suffering of all pervasive as a suffering, which they are experiencing suffering of change, experience of all pervasive, but because we don't understand it's a true suffering, so therefore we don't feel they are suffering. Therefore, we don't feel hard to feel compassion. But when you see suffering of pain, because it's so obvious and we understand it's a suffering, then when you see someone starving, someone wounded, someone, all of that, you can feel compassion easily, because you understand that is a suffering, that's a pain. And so I think that is one, and I think that is one of the reasons why going through the three sufferings is important, especially meditating on suffering of change and suffering of all pervasive as really sufferings, because at the moment we don't see them as suffering. Actually, we are still attached to those things, and still we want to achieve them.
So what I'm understanding is that perhaps I should concentrate on reflecting on the suffering of change and the suffering of all pervasive compounded suffering, which will help. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, then dedications.
Thank you. Sherab, could you please share the dedication prayers? Thanks. From Master Shantideva. Oh, Shayla's just asking. That's no problem, Shayla. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Mary Camille. Okay. Master Shantideva's prayer. May all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, Until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And then the long life prayer for His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Gangri Rawe Korwe Jin Kam Dear Hendan Dewa Malu Jungwe Chen Rei Zingwa Tenzin Gyatso Yi Jape Si Te Bardu Tengyur Chik. We also pray for the long lives of our other teachers and as well as for our resident teacher, Geshe Sherab. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you.